Hello, everyone, and welcome to Porch Talk presents Sports Talk. I am Adam Van, and I am joined, as always, with my co-host when it comes to all discussion of sports, and that's Marcus. What's going on, Marcus?
Happy to make the hot tag and join you on the porch to talk some sports, man. And I see a little bit of the grease shelf behind you. I'm not mad at it.
I always, again, on the porch, we do video podcasts. I know that's frowned upon some other places in the soon-to-be-named network, but I make sure that anybody who has the unfortunate displeasure of looking at my face gets to see a cardboard cutout of Alexa behind me. So enjoy.
Prime too, respectfully.
And the best thing is, like, nobody gets to see what's on the wall on the other side of the camera. Like that's just for me to look at.
I'm afraid to ask.
After the show.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk sports with you here because over at Final Wrestling Place, me and Tim might talk a little bit of sports, but he reels me in, so I can't really go into like any further details, expound about anything. And we know that Papa Joe frowns upon it as well. So yeah, we got to do. If I want to talk sports, I have to make a whole different podcast with Todd. So
yeah, the great Helmet podcast, No
that's right.
Chance in Helmet, limited run engagement. Go check that out. But yeah, one of my highlights, one of the many highlights of listening to Final Wrestling Place is the occasional baseball rant or celebratory conversation that comes in there, and also listening to Tim jump on and off of bandwagons as the seasons go by.
Yeah, he's definitely he'll like check in maybe once or twice a month, check
Yeah.
out, come back, check in. Hey, how are my teams doing? All right,
Just checking the
and then
temperature. Just checking the
that'll
temperature.
determine the next time he checks in.
Yeah, but absolutely. So you and I had kind of loose plans to do this episode for a while now. The
Yeah.
original plan was to do it before the playoffs started, but things come up. You're a busy dad. I am busy doing doll safaris and sleeping till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So
Oof,
uh,
I
happy to
miss it.
get it in now.
Yeah, it's mostly just me being forgetful.
Nah, it's all good. It's all good. But you know what? It's a good thing that we did it today
Hmm.
because today was a good day, Marcus.
Today was the best day we've had in quite some time.
Oh, tell them about it. Tell them about it.
So as of recording, this is October 17th in the year 2022.
18th.
And it's the 18th already? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. There we go. I'm forgetful. It's October 18th. And the Yankees have just completed a 5-game series with the very scrappy Cleveland Guardians, taking the
Absolutely.
series 3-2, winning 2 games in a row, which I thought was not going to happen.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, New York, we're going to be on to Houston. In my mind, I enjoyed the win for about 3 minutes, and it's on to
Yeah.
Houston. I know some of our mutuals online are not over it, being Cleveland fans, but hey, it's kind of a little brother, big brother situation. You want to punch up to Big Brother, and sometimes Big Brother's got to put you down, remind you where you're at. And like I said, we're on to Houston.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, going into this series against the Guardians, I fully expected. I don't want to come off as arrogant because, and we'll get into this later on in the show. I do not have strong feelings of like a deep Yankees run, but I always assumed that they would handle the Guardians. Like,
Mm.
I did not expect that to go to 5 games. I fully expected in my mind that we'd win the two in New York and win one of them in Cleveland. And I had a very vigorous and long planned out trolling campaign of things I was going to tweet if the Yankees won in Cleveland, about it being Aaron Judge's land now. And honestly, it got to the point where I was convinced that there was no chance the Yankees were going to pull this off. Like, 3-run lead, 4-run lead. Nope, not good enough. We need 20 runs, or somehow they're going to dink and dunk their way back to taking this thing. And I at no point felt confident in that series after game two.
No, especially on Twitter when the lineup from the Yankees got put out and like the pitching rotation got put out for the rest of the playoffs, and Boone is out there giving quotes about this is our plans for game 2, 3, 4, and like we'll figure out 5. And like you, I figured we would wrap this up in 4, but as soon as I saw Boone almost premeditating to botch 2 games of the series, I'm like, why would we do such a thing? Why not just end it when we can? And we messed around, and it felt like we intentionally lost game 2. We intentionally lost game 3. And then we had to turn the Jets on and really scrap and get the bats going to win game 4 and 5. So yeah, I was definitely panicked. Thankfully, we got an ace outing from Severino in game 3, which is like, okay, we're gonna get this. And then that's when really the bullpen mismanagement really kicked in.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and like you mentioned, Severino having an ace outing. I mean, you got to give credit. This is probably the best postseason that Cole has had as a Yankee, and obviously Nestor Cortez, a guy that a year ago, if you said, "Oh, your playoff lives are going to be dependent on Nestor Cortez," like you wouldn't have gone into that feeling confident. But like when there was the rain out yesterday and they said that because of the extra day that Cortez was going to start, like it was a weight was lifted off my shoulders, having him go.
Yeah, I was concerned because I think there's a stat in the last couple years, starters on 3 days rest in the playoffs are like 7-15.
Mm-hmm.
And the ERA is like 6 or something ridiculously high. Um, so I was like, oof. Once I heard that, I wasn't too sure about it, but um, I don't know the splits, but I felt like Cleveland struggled a bit with left-handed pitching with so many righties in their lineup, and um, so that was kind of our saving grace. And yeah, like you said, to think that Nestor was going to be our second ace,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
even going into the playoffs, I didn't believe it. I was like, he's a game 3 guy, and like I know we like Sevy, but I figured we'd piggyback Sevy with another starter.
Well, there was a lot of people saying that Cortez should have pitched game 1. That
Right.
was a huge argument because Cole had a good season. He led the league in strikeouts, but he gave up a billion home runs,
Right.
and he was not the shutdown ace that he was in Houston. So there was a very strong case to having Cortez be the number 1, but you kind of got to start the guy that you're paying $100 million an inning to.
Yeah, there was almost like no internal Yankees debate about it as far as like the front office went. Like Cole was getting the ball game 1. But yeah, I think there was a discussion because like Nestor pitched great this season. He really carried the team. Cole had his ups and downs. Nestor, he had a couple bad starts here and there. I would say no more than 3 or 4, whereas Cole, like his whole September was not very good. He really struggled down the stretch. So I was nervous a little bit. But Cole gave us 2 dominant ace outings. Even though ace outings are a little bit different now than what they used to be.
Yeah.
I think if you can go quality start and only give up 2 runs, I think that's an ace outing in the current climate of playoff baseball. So yeah, I think Cole. Some people online, I'll ask you this: do you think Cole earned his pinstripes?
Winning a divisional series, whatever, I don't think that does enough. Like that can earn you whatever the pinstripe equivalent is on a lot of other franchises,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously it's cliche to say 27 championships. We're not playing for a trip to the ALCS.
Right.
So thank you for what you did in that round, Cole, but like you ain't earned your pinstripes. And the same thing with like people are giving the flowers to Harrison Bader and Giancarlo Stanton, and like I'm not willing to put these people in the pantheon of Yankees unless they get it done, and they haven't gotten it done yet. And we'll get into our predictions later on. But one other thing that to kind of wrap this up, as far as the series with the Guardians, one of the places other than the dink and dunk and bloop offense of the Guardians, but one of the places where they were really good was their bullpen,
Yeah.
and that was an area that you know maybe leading up to the All-Star game or 3/4 of the way into the season, we're like, man, we got the bullpen locked down.
Right.
And then everybody died.
Yep. Yeah, there was huge discussions back in like looking into the postseason back when we were, 102, it felt like. Um, who's going to make this playoff roster? Because, you can't carry more than 13 pitchers. The bullpen was so stacked. Like, there was going to be at least 2 people left off the roster just from the bullpen alone who deserved to be there. And King went down, and Chad Green went down, and Johnny thankfully now has turned it on, but Loizaga looked bad, and Chapman was shut down and looked bad, and Clay Holmes reached his career high for innings pitched before the All-Star break.
Yeah.
And like anybody who's seen baseball before could tell you, like, maybe you should cool off on that guy. So yeah, I was definitely concerned about the bullpen coming into this. Cleveland had that advantage. And yeah, hats off to Cleveland. Like, they've got the low payroll, small town market, all that good stuff. But like, I mean, they took the Bronx Bombers and the multi-million-dollar evil empire to the limit. And they really made us really made the guys getting paid a lot earn those paychecks, like Stanton and Judge, or presumably Judge with his next contract. But
Yeah.
I was definitely concerned about the bullpen, but yeah, I guess later on when we preview the Houston series, I hope we didn't work ourselves into a shoot. Like, I hope we didn't unload everything we had to get to the ALCS.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can't leave any bullets in the chamber
Right.
and then not make it. So
Right.
it's like that wild card game a couple years ago where the Orioles, where Buck Showalter didn't play Zach Britton. Speaking
Yeah.
of Yankee relievers, in a tie game, he didn't want to waste Britton because he wanted to save him for the series that they weren't guaranteed to be in yet.
Yeah, that's happened a couple times the last few years. Like you said, Britton with Baltimore. I remember Washington did it with Strasburg. The Mets did it with Syndergaard and DeGrom. So yeah, there's a long history of that. So you gotta get it done to make it.
Absolutely. But again, congratulations to the Guardians. Congratulations to the Guardians fans,
Heck of
except
a
for
season.
one of them. Yeah. But as Marcus alluded to, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go over some predictions of end of season, regular season awards, kind of like what Marcus and I think are, and we'll get into this in a second, like the Cy Young Award winners, the Rookie of the Year, and so on and so forth, and kind of present our cases for who we think the winners of these awards, and these are regular season awards, obviously. There might be some bias leaking in as far as who did what in the postseason, but we'll do our best to stomp that out. But Marcus, let's start with pitching since we were just talking about the bullpen.
All right.
I'm going to throw it over to you. Who do you think should be the National League Cy Young Award winner?
If I had a vote, my National League Cy Young Award winner would be Sandy Alcantara from the Miami Marlins. Now, the Marlins didn't make much noise during the season. I think the most noise they made was before the season started when Derek Jeter left. That was the highlight and low point of their season. But this guy pitched outstanding. I want to pull up his stats real quick from this season. Now, he kind of had some Cy Young buzz going into the season, but it was a lot of like put him in like a top 5 category, right? Or like top 10 vote getter. But let's see.
I actually have some stats here.
Oh, okay, pull them up. Yeah.
I agree with you. So, Sandy Alcantara was my National League Cy Young presumptive winner as well. Sandy Alcantara, a guy who I had in fantasy baseball last year before he quite figured it out. And then I didn't draft him this year because I was like, he didn't do well for me last year. So I'm going to pass on him. But Sandy had a 2.28 ERA.
Yeah.
Led baseball in innings with 228 and 2/3 innings with 6 complete games and 14 wins on a very bad team.
Yeah, that's just you're not getting that even from the guys that you're paying buku bucks to. You're just not getting that. And the Marlins are one of those teams that they're stocked with starting pitching, and you really would have wished they would have taken one or two of those arms either from the farm system or the major leagues and go get some bats, which is what Jeter wanted. But in all that turmoil for this dude to show up and pitch like people kind of predicted him to, but at the same time, like exceed those expectations as well. I was blown away. Being in a Philadelphia market, I get to see a lot of Phillies games, whether I want to or not. So I got to see Sandy pitch quite a bit. And then also, it seemed like anytime they had a West Coast game, it was always like the MLB Network game. So if I was up late, I was watching like him versus the Dodgers. The Dodgers kind of owned him, which was weird. But any other West Coast games that he pitched on, like he was just tremendous. So that's my Cy Young vote award winner.
All right, yeah, like we actually, like I said, we overlapped on that, and we're gonna alternate just so I don't seem like I'm currying favor with you and just copying your answer. So I'm gonna go over to the American League for the Cy Young. I was kind of torn on this. I could have very easily, I could have done a bit and just picked a Yankee for every one of them, because Garrett Cole did lead the Major League Baseball in strikeouts with 257. So I could have said Cole. Could have said Cortez. There is the obvious front runner, but I'm going to actually go with Dylan Cease from the Chicago White Sox.
Okay.
Did not quite have the national exposure of maybe a Verlander, but he had a streak in the middle of the season where he had 14 starts in a row with one run or fewer.
Yeah, that's incredible.
This is another guy who just played on an underwhelming team. You know, he didn't get a lot of wins because the White Sox were booty and, just kind of didn't put it together under La Russa. But Cease was a guy, again, I hate to bring it back to fantasy, but I rode him for a lot of wins that I did not deserve. So Dylan Cease is my pick.
Yeah, he kind of came out of nowhere because he was kind of like the third or fourth arm for Chicago and didn't have the same hype as like a Kopech or Giolito did. And he really came out of nowhere this season, just pitched lights out. One of the few high points for a very disappointing White Sox team. Kind of a chic pick to win the World Series or at least go to the World Series this year and to come out of the AL mid, but that didn't happen. I think this is where I let my own narrative affect my judgment. As good as Cease was, you mentioned his name. My vote getter would be Justin Verlander. Not just because he's coming off of Tommy John, but pulling up his stats. So he did go 175 innings pitched. He did have a 15-day IL stint in September, which was kind of one of those like phantom IL stints just to cool him off for the playoffs. And he didn't have a great playoff start either against the Mariners, I believe. Yeah, he got rocked against the Mariners. But like just talking regular season, he pitched 175 innings for a guy who's pushing 40 years old and on a team where they didn't need him to do that. The Astros really could have sleptwalk to win their division. I think a couple people were like, "Oh, what about the Mariners? Or what about the Angels?" And we'll talk about them later. But it was Houston's division the whole time, and they really didn't need that kind of performance from him. Yeah. But yeah, I was just super impressed by Verlander, especially with his home starts, like pitching with the Crawford boxes out there. Like if you hit a pop fly to left field, it's gone at like 300 feet.
But Marcus, that's a Major League Baseball stadium. It's not a Little League field like in New York.
Oh my goodness, right? Yeah, not New York where it's 408 to hit a ball out of center field. Sorry.
Yeah, I had Verlander on my short list, as I mentioned before. An interesting stat that I found out, like obviously great season on a great team. 1.75 ERA was actually the lowest ERA from a starting pitcher that was qualified since 2000. So like that's 22 years of baseball. And as you mentioned, a guy that who knew, like, was he ever going to be able to come back and be a starting pitcher or reliever? Or is he just going to go home to Kate Upton and just say the heck with this?
Stronger man than I am. That's
I know. Just take those Detroit paychecks and stay home. But yeah, a great pitcher, and maybe his name will come up later in another category. Maybe it won't. But yeah, so interesting there. We crossed over on one and we didn't cross over on the other. So I'm going to move it over to Rookie of the Year. Marcus, National League Rookie of the Year, if you would.
Let me pull up my vote getter stats. My National League Rookie of the Year would be Michael Harris II, center fielder for the Atlanta Braves. Excuse me, Mr. Tim's Atlanta Braves when he wants to check in. I trying to see when he got called up. I think he was a May call up, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it
But
was middle, kind of like middle of the season. If I'm not, yeah, I'm fuzzy on that.
okay, but yeah, he definitely started the year in AAA. Came up to the big leagues. He had 414 at bats, 123 hits, 75 runs scored, and he mostly batted towards the bottom of their lineup. So, like, for him to get 75 runs, that's pretty good. 21 base on balls, 64 RBI, hit 297 in a year where the league average was like 220 or down towards there. So he was really an above average hitter this whole season.
Yeah, what I'm
And
seeing, if I may, I'm seeing here when Atlanta called him up, they were 22 and 24. So they were 46 games into the season with a below 500 record. And after the call up, they were major league best 79 and 37.
yeah, he
So
was kind of the spark to get that offense going. Because they had so many dudes who, you know, talking about like how high players are paid or whatever, but like there's a lot of big earners on those Braves teams that have earned those contracts by coming up through the farm system and delivering on their expectations, like Acuna and like Albies and guys like those. Recently traded Matt Olson. So yeah, for him to come up and for the Braves to like recognize that, hey, we can't just bank on being World Series champions like that was last season. We got to do something to get this team going. For him to be the call up and to be that move, as opposed to going to the trade market, and for him to come up and perform like that, he's definitely my NL Rookie of the Year.
yeah, and they have him locked down long term, I believe.
Yeah, he signed a big boy contract too.
Yeah. Um, I had Michael Harris on as like a 50-50. I was going to wait and see if we had any overlap on this and if you can convince me to your case. My other person, I'm gonna leave this my decision for a second, but my other person was actually also from Tim's Atlanta Braves,
Mm-hmm.
and that is rookie pitcher Spencer Strider.
Yeah.
I mentioned strikeouts a bunch. I mentioned Cole strikeouts and ceases. This dude had a 13.8, almost 14 Ks per nine,
That's insane.
202 Ks from a rookie pitcher. The reason why I think I might lean towards Strider is because you never see a rookie pitcher deliver on the hype. It's always
Yeah.
their second year, their third year. They come up with a lot of promise and they're always on like an innings count
Right.
or they just can't quite figure out major league batters yet. And it takes them a year or two for it to click. But Strider hit the ground running. And
Yeah.
I think it's much harder to just come out as a rookie pitcher and not have your arm fall off within the first month. So I'm gonna go Strider.
Especially in that division too. Like that's
Yeah.
sure the Marlins are kind of a freebie, but like you got to compete with the Mets and not just compete, like you're on a World Series team and to hold your own against the Mets and against the Phillies, it's like that's tough.
Yeah. Again, the Braves had a great regular season. My apologies again to Tim. If he doesn't listen to this, shame on him, but by all means, extend my condolences for the disappointing early exit. But all right, so again, we're kind of off track with that one. So let's go over to the American League. And I'm going to go first on this one. And this, I don't think, is who people will pick as their rookie of the year. Maybe he's in their top five, but this also might be a case of recency bias. But I'm going to go with Stephen Kwan from the Cleveland
Oh,
Guardians.
wow. Okay.
Obviously, having just watched the playoff series against the Yanks, it's not relevant to the award, but still, this is a guy that's impossible to get out. During the
Hmm.
regular season, he batted 298 for a freaking rookie. I think he struck out 3 times all season, but no, he actually had 62 walks to 60 Ks. So he walked more than he struck out, and he played pretty much the whole season. I think
Yeah.
he was on the roster from spring training. I don't think he started right away, but within the first few weeks of the season, he was their everyday starter, everyday leadoff guy. Just a guy who constantly makes contact, constantly got on base, was driven in by all the Ramirez and all the other Guardians. Stephen Kwan's my pick for the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, they even let go of Oscar Marcado or Mercado during the season, who was going to be like their big kind of outfielder. And Quan just outplayed him, and Mercado could never get off the ground this season, and they let him go. I think in July or August. Also, as a opportunity maker and taker, Quan was easy money. Uh, king of the parlay. You throw him in a hit parlay, and you know he's coming through. If you want to throw big money down on a Quan opportunity for one hit or two total bases, he's coming through every single time. So, Mr. Quan, I would like to thank you for
Marcus,
several opportunities.
you gotta start like a not a 1-900 number. That's Joe's gimmick, but let's start like a website behind a paywall with some of your betting advice. You
Oh,
know,
it hasn't been. You don't want it the last couple weeks. Hasn't been too good.
I think it's like Major League Baseball. You just gotta be right 3 times out of 10. You'll be a Hall of Famer.
Like a weatherman, yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Who's your American League pick?
I am gonna go with the sexy pick, and that is Julio Rodriguez, center fielder for the Seattle Mariners. Seattle Mariners have a long-standing history of these rookies that come up and perform huge, and then take their team to the playoffs. And they haven't had that in quite some time, really since A-Rod.
Yeah, Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah, A-Rod, Ken Griffey Jr., right? So for Julio Rodriguez to get the call up to start the season, hitting leadoff, and this kid hit 28 home runs in what is very much a pitcher's ballpark. 75 RBI, 25 stolen bases as well, 40 bases on balls. He did strike out a good bit, 145 times, but that batting average was up at 284. The on base percentage was 345. Um, OPS plus, yeah, 1 dot. Yeah, he did great. Um, I was super impressed by him, and he also got a big boy contract
Yeah.
while the season was still ongoing. So he's going to be in Seattle for quite some time, and he definitely lived up to the hype. He does. I'm not going to say he's in the same air as my favorite player of all time, Ken Griffey Jr., but he's definitely living up to the hype, and I think a Rookie of the Year award is in order for him.
Yeah, it's a guy that obviously, based on those stats, had a great year. And you mentioned that Seattle's ballpark is cavernous, to put it lightly. One of my favorite feel-good baseball players. Like I gravitate to like a lot of lesser tier players, as a lot of people know. Nick Swisher's like one of my favorite Yankees. But like I am a huge fan of Jesse Winker, who played in
Mm-hmm.
Great American Small Park for
Yep.
in Cincinnati Reds. Just hit bombs after bombs after bombs, got traded to Seattle, and I was big
Disappeared.
mad about that. I was big mad.
Disappeared. Yep.
Yeah, and he never hit another home run again. I think he was like Willie Mays Hayes in the Major League movies, where he was just hitting to warning track over and over again. You know? And like half of his fly balls would have been out in Cincinnati, but they weren't in Seattle. So it's a tough place to hit. But yeah, it's just one of those things. West Coast, you just don't see enough of their games when you live on the
Right.
East Coast, you know?
Right. And the main thing for him too to really like anchor that team that ended their 20 something year playoff drought.
Yeah.
That kind of gives him the extra boost for me.
Oh, yeah.
And in the playoffs, like he was phenomenal too.
Yeah, I saw a great graphic, on social media where it was like one of those things where like the last time the Mariners won a playoff series or a playoff game, it was like, MySpace wasn't invented yet, and
Wow.
the iPod didn't exist, and like all of those things. So, good on the Mariners. Hopefully next year will be their year, maybe, to at least get out of the first round.
Yeah, maybe
But
they'll see the Yankees in the ALCS.
oh, good, we'll stomp them out. All right. So I'm going to mix it up a little bit, and I'm going to go with something that I don't even think this is a real award. This is more of an NFL award, but hell with it. This is our show. I'm going to go with Comeback Player of the Year or Most Improved Player, however you want to shape it. But let's start with the National League. Marcus, do you have a National League Comeback Player of the Year?
Sure do. It's Ronald Acuna for the Atlanta Braves. Tore his ACL last season. Once he tore his ACL, it was kind of like, oh no, like the Brave season is done. Pack it up. He is one of these generational talents that seem to be coming by more frequently in
Mhm.
baseball. But yeah, for him to come back from a torn ACL as quick as he did, they started him off in as DH. Now his numbers haven't really matched his career numbers, but still, like, it's going to take you a long time to come back from an ACL injury. Those aren't even like super common in baseball. You more often get like your elbow injuries and back and lat injuries. So to come back from an ACL, to work his way back, and then to be a big part of that Atlanta offense, yeah, he's my comeback player of the year.
A lot of valid points. The only thing I will not disagree with you on, but say why I wouldn't consider Acuna for my award is, as you mentioned, very young guy. Somebody who has a ton of great years ahead of him. Uh, Odds were that he was going to, might not have been this season, maybe it would have been next season, but he was going to get back to where he
Hmm.
was. So I'm going to go with somebody a little bit on the opposite age spectrum, and I'm going to go with Mr. Albert Pujols, the machine.
Oh yeah.
This is a guy who, much like most players who go out to Anaheim, was left for dead.
Yep.
Just scrapped, said, "Go. We're not even platooning anymore. You're not worth a pinch hit." Obviously, he goes back home to St. Louis to the Cardinals. As a part-time player, hits 24 home runs, 68 RBIs, a 270 batting average, which isn't great for Albert Pujols, but it's great for most of the league,
Yep.
and exceeds the 700 home runs, gets to have a great farewell, doesn't have to go and retire with that question mark or finishing on 699. If that had happened, I would have wanted him to come back for the first week of next year. But maybe as an old timer myself, I'm a little biased, but I had to go with Pujols.
Yeah, Winnie the Pooh Albert Pujols, me and Mr. Tim to this day will still mention just seeing Albert Pujols play like the Pirates and just turn on a fastball or a hanger for like 700 feet.
Yeah.
I've never seen a ball hit so hard up until I saw Aaron Judge in person. But yeah, Pujols I think is, if you want to put a qualifier on it, one of the best hitters of like the first 20 years
Yeah.
of the new century. And then he had his little Dodger stint in there too. And yeah, towards the end of that, he just kind of looked like a DFA candidate. Like, hey, like he's just washed out. He doesn't have it anymore. Obviously he's what, 42 years old or whatever. So to see him
Hey,
go
I'm
back
42.
in baseball years, that's old.
Yeah.
Uh, for him to go back to St. Louis, where it wasn't like all roses when he left, especially with like them being like, we're not paying you for
Yeah.
past services. Um, to go there and kind of, just put a nice little bow on that time and kind of atone for the 8 years or so that were just lost to time and space out in the LA for both teams. It definitely makes me feel good as a baseball fan to see him, especially go out with Wainwright and Yachty too. That
Yeah.
was just really special.
Can you imagine if, not only if he didn't leave St. Louis, because there's something to be said about like playing there, and obviously, it's not like Anaheim is this pitcher's ballpark, but he just always had better numbers, both as a younger player 8 years ago and now as a 42-year-old. Just seems to play better in St. Louis. Like
Mhm.
if he didn't, leave on that big free agent deal, or maybe you could say didn't get the heel injury or the plantar fasciitis. I think he had something
Yeah.
with his foot that kind of took away his power for a year or two. This is a guy who not only would have like potentially exceeded like Babe Ruth's home runs, but could have taken Bonds out.
Yeah, for like if he stays in St. Louis, right, which is I think it's an average ballpark as far as, lending towards pitchers or hitters. Um, but yeah, going out to LA and just like the instability of that franchise. He was there for the Josh Hamilton fiasco years,
Jeez, yeah.
where they spent a lot of money on like the CJ Wilsons, a lot of bad contracts. Maybe he was one of them. Um, and just a franchise that was like hot and cold on spending and building a winner. Like when you pay Albert Pujols, you're not playing for a wild card. Like you need to go all in on a World Series, and that franchise was just never all in. Unable to build a farm system his whole entire career there, probably begging for somebody to come take his job. Still towards Ed, like I wouldn't say anybody earned the first base position. It was just like we just have to try younger guys.
Yeah.
So, my
Oh, wait.
comeback. Oh,
I,
go
it,
ahead.
it's my turn to recommend, and I want to lead this off
Okay.
because this has some pomp and circumstance to it and some respect that needs to be put on this name. And this is the entire reason why I wanted to go first on this one, Marcus. And I want to give my American League Comeback Player of the Year to the most feared power hitter in all of baseball, the face of New York baseball, Matt Carpenter.
Oh, cart baby.
This is a guy who hit three. Or first of all, speaking of left for dead, this is a guy that the Cardinals, the aforementioned Cardinals, were like, nah, you ain't good enough to be a bench player for us.
Right.
So he basically was like, all right, I'm out from the Cardinals. And he went to where Major League Baseball players go to die, the Texas Rangers. Wasn't good enough to play for the Texas Rangers. So he got DFA'd by the Rangers, signed by the Yankees, and basically in 47 games, hits 37 RBIs, 15 home runs, a 305 batting average. And this is my favorite part, a 727 slugging percentage.
Sheesh.
Judge's slugging percentage was 686. So nearly like more than 50 points higher slugging percentage than Judge. And yes, he had the foot injury. And yes, he didn't quite come through on the two pinch hit appearances in the playoffs. But again, the playoffs don't matter for this. But nobody strikes fear into Major League pitching like 2022 Matt Carpenter.
We line up on our award. I do give it to Carp. I was gonna give it to Verlander, but Verlander
Yeah.
got my Cy Young love. And I think this is a perfect award for Carpenter. He had such a good story, like you said, getting played out, getting taken out back by the Cardinals, and getting put in the dome. Yeah. And then during the off season, like going to different batters, going to like Joey Votto and going to different guys, and like just doing a tour of like what can I change about my swing? And like Joey Votto's a guy who changed up his swing, and he probably did so to the tune of like a Hall of Fame nomination. Even though he really hasn't done too much as a player, he's just been solidly consistent and found ways to reinvent himself. And Carpenter did the same thing. Focused on his launch angle. He changed his swing, which was like really cool to watch videos about that, and like just how it like 12, 13 years in the bigs or whatever, like to just completely change your swing and your mechanics and not be too prideful to do that and just, hey, this is how I solved my problems 10 years ago. It's the same way I'm going to do it now. Like, no, he changed things about himself. Blessing to get released by the Rangers, who went out and spent a buttload of money in the off season. And yeah, to end up in New York, it definitely does help with the short porch. Can't deny that. Carpenter was a short porch king, but he was putting up numbers that we literally have not seen in baseball during the stretch. He was better than Barry Bonds at his best stretch when he broke the single season home run record. So like this was the best hitter that we've ever ever seen in our lifetime.
Yeah,
And
during
then
that stretch, that small sample size.
he just has a freak accident, a break in a bone in his foot, fielding the ball. Was that July, August? And he
I thought
says
he
first
fouled it. I thought it was like a foul, if I'm not
he
mistaken.
might have fouled it, and then I know he was playing the field, and like that's where it like really
Aggravated
gave
it.
out. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, his first words, "I'll be back." He's like, I'm not done yet."
Yeah.
And sure enough, last series against the Texas Rangers, he's healthy, ready to go. I don't know if they really played him, but he was ready to go and back on the bench. So
Yeah.
yeah, love that for Carpenter, and especially the year that the Yankees have. It's like who's going to be the other bat, and you think it's going to be Stanton, but like he had a Stanton year, so Carpenter really provided the extra oomph in the lineup, other than Aaron Judge.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. If you're not a Yankee fan, you probably don't either know who Matt Carpenter is or know what he was able to produce during that small window where he started getting a lot of pinch hit appearances and starts. But man, I don't know what's going to happen with him next year.
Right.
I hope he gets an invite to camp. I hope he makes the team, but I don't know. We'll see. But
I would like to
best
think he
wishes.
made himself at least like $5 million, like just to be a DH and clubhouse presence guy. To tie this together in like a wrestling um, like a wrestling comparison.
Yeah,
Uh,
suits for Joe.
yeah. So Joe, you know how Christian was just like, hey, heck of a solid hand his whole career. He had one good year. It was like, whoa, you're really good. You're top five guy for us. And then he just went back to being a solid hand. This run was like his one more match run. Just out of the blue, out of nowhere, late stages of his career, just all time legendary stuff.
Well, who's the Yankee that he's gonna take under his wing to be his Luchasaurus? That's the next question. All right, so the only thing we have left as far as awards is the big ones. But Marcus, do you have any other honorable mentions? Anything else you want to kind of shout out from the season? Any awards that you want to hand out?
Yeah, I have one I want to talk about, and I'm a big trade deadline dude. I hate how in baseball, baseball has the most active trade deadline out of all the sports, I think. And you have your biggest chance of seeing a big name get moved during the deadline, just because teams have different financial reasons, especially with like this not a salary cap, but it's basically the salary cap,
Yeah,
the
luxury
luxury
tax.
tax.
Yeah.
Teams trying to get under that. Teams willing to go over it. Circumstances pending. So I live for the trade deadline, and I wanted to ask you, Adam, did you have a trade of the year? Something that you think a move a team made that you really thought put them in the edge, over the edge, whether it was for this season, whether it's also setting them up for next season, helping them make a playoff push, or something that you really liked but just didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, I can spend 20 minutes complaining about the non-trades that the Yankees made or the trades that they made that ended up resulting in having a dead-armed pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'll go with the easiest answer, and that's Juan Soto to the Padres.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, Soto, a guy who walks more, gets on base more than any other player in baseball, like Barry Bonds levels of on base percentage. And with the Padres losing Tatis to steroids, getting that big suspension, the Padres looked like their playoff chances were going to kind of go down the toilet. But between Machado getting hot at the last minute and Soto finally finding his groove, and the fact that Soto's really young and they have him for, I believe, 2 more seasons.
2 more seasons
Yeah,
before you even have to extend them. Yep.
yeah, so I mean, that's obviously an up and coming franchise that's in the final four of the playoffs this year. That really stick their claim to potentially at least being a wild card threat in their division, their conference for the rest of the next 2 years at least.
Yeah, I love the Soto move for San Diego or whoever was going to make it.
Yeah, I would
That's a
have rathered
deal.
it was New York.
Oh my gosh, right. Especially considering what it took to go get him. Like, you can only give up but so much to go get somebody.
Yeah,
And even looking at what the Padres gave up was like a fringe MLB ready arm with Mackenzie Gore, their top prospect, and like another top prospect, and then like two lower end prospects. Like they gave up 5 or 6 players to go get the closest thing again that we have to Barry Bonds. Talking about his walk percentage and on base percentage, and he's also like 22 years old, and he's already won a World Series, and he's already been a clubhouse leader for a bad franchise. He's already been through the ups and downs. He's already experienced it all, and
yeah.
he's been in the league for like 3 or 4 years. So I'm like, you absolutely go get this dude, and you don't even have to worry about extending him. Like you can make the trade and he will pay off the trade within those 2 years. you don't even have to extend him to justify what you gave up because those prospects aren't going to shake out. I think like the closest comparison to that trade was the trade the Tigers made for Miguel Cabrera, and they also like threw in Dontrell Willis into that deal. And like the only names they gave up was like Cameron Maben was the only dude who like really turned into anything, and he's a replacement level MLB player. Like I love Cameron Maben, one of my favorites, but
Yeah.
like just a sentimental favorite. Like he was a top
Underrated,
prospect. Yeah.
underrated yes booth guy too.
Oh, he's so good in the booth. So good in the booth. That's how he can get into the Hall of Fame. But yeah, just for his career, he's just like, okay, he turned out to be an MLB player. Nothing special. Like that's what prospects are. And like if you give up a prospect and they turn out to be like, oh crap, we gave up Fernando Tatis before steroids got a hold of him, then like shoot, it happens once in a blue moon. So yeah, just thinking like what the Yankees could have gave up, especially since we refused to play our prospects who we refused to give up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really hurt.
Like you and I speak a lot of the times in DMs about like trades and prospects, and obviously I think I'm much more extreme than you are because I'm always saying just get rid of the farm system. I was like, we don't need a minor league system. Everybody you get, you go and trade because all that matters is what's on the major league roster. And a lot of times I get out of hand, but I agree. Should have dumped out the farm system for Soto. Uh, Fortunate for us, we still have all those guys, so we can dump them for Otani.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
this offseason, we'll see how that plays out. Otherwise, we'll have to revisit that for our hot stove episode when it comes up in the spring.
I'd love to do a hot stove episode with you. And yeah, I already Otani. So Otani signed like the 1 year tender for them, which was like $30 million. Or yeah, it was a pre-arbitration contract. So flat $30 million for somebody who both pitches and hits very well.
Mm-hmm.
One, that's a steal.
Yeah.
Two, reports came out I think early this morning or yesterday that Otani's already back in Japan, and he's very candid in interviews so far, talking about how he did not like this year with the Angels and the instability again of the franchise and how they are directionless, and he feels like he's wasting time there. And then like as Japanese custom, he was like, I don't have anything else nice to say about my time with the Angels this season, and like left it at that. So like this is a dude you got to trade. Like yeah, the Angels, they've had several people that they should have traded to replenish their farm system. Mike Trout's one of them who
Yeah.
they need to trade, and Otani's the other guy that you have to trade. And the problem is when the GM doesn't want to be the guy who trades Otani, doesn't want to be the guy who trades Mike Trout. But you've had these great players. You've had Trout for 10 years or whatever. Hasn't made a difference. You've had
Yeah.
Otani for 3 or 4 years now. Hasn't made a difference.
Yeah, like I have some sympathy for Otani because if you remember when he was coming over to the States, the Yankees were somebody that were heavily recruiting him. They were
Yeah.
sending was it Tanaka to talk to him,
Yep.
and kind of sell him on New York. But at the end of the day, he chose the Angels because it's a shorter flight back to Japan. It was just basically a proximity thing. And I don't think he liked New York, which New York isn't for everybody. But so he ends up signing with the Angels, and maybe he didn't know what he was getting into. But I have no sympathy for Mike Trout because he had, 8+ years of his career of being on the Angels and seeing that, hey, they don't know what they're doing from a farm system standpoint, from a player acquisition standpoint. And he had his opportunity.
Whoop, there's that word again.
Yeah, there it is. He had his opportunity a couple years ago to get out of there. And he, for whatever reason, he signed a long-term deal with the Angels, which I believe has a no trade clause.
Yeah.
He can. I'm sure he can approve a trade if it ever comes to it, but he willingly sentenced himself to a career's worth of nobody seeing your games and not making it to the playoffs.
You know what we call that? We call that a walk behind her. Mike Trout is a walk behind her, baby. He's afraid of the lights. Turn them off. They're too bright.
Yeah.
He doesn't want it. Yeah, I lost a little respect for Trout. Just like staying with a notably bad franchise. You know, I know being the highest paid position player by annual value helps
Yeah.
helps the pain. Another reason Otani stayed or decided to go with the Angels, I don't know if you know this, um, we had a scout in the Yankee system, Andrew something, I don't remember his last name, and he went and scouted Otani like years ago, and him and Otani became friends. And he had the in with Otani, which is why the Yankees thought they had such a good chance with him. But this scout got hired by the Angels like the season or two before and was like a vice president of baseball operations or something. And so he had the in with Otani,
Okay.
and he was able to like help, like, hey, it's a short flight, like all the reasons that you said, like he had the relationship with Otani that the Yankees didn't have, the other teams in the mix just didn't have. Like that was the familiar face.
It's
So that helped
it,
him.
it's kind of like a high school football recruit that the college really wants, so they hire the high school coach as an assistant
You're right.
to kind of lure him in. You
Yeah.
know, I was not aware of that. But any other things you want to mention before we get on to the main event?
Yeah, I'll throw my trade of the year out there. I talked about this franchise a little bit earlier, but the Seattle Mariners went out and they did the thing, and they got Luis Castillo,
Oh,
starting
okay.
pitcher from the Cincinnati Reds. And I was even on the fence with Castillo. I was like, he's a solid number two, right? You know, three. Worst case scenario. No, this dude, this dude left a garbage team, and he proved that he's an ace. And Seattle gave up a lot to go get him. Like they really cleared out their farm system to go get this dude. But he's another guy. Like he had another year of control, I think, so he wasn't a true rental. And then they signed him to an extension before the playoffs, so he's going to be there for the next 5 years. And he signed like a sweetheart of a deal too. It was like $100 million or something. So
Oh,
he's
nice.
already, yeah, he's already outperformed his contract and is due for another one. So yeah, that was my trade of the year. I thought the Mariners going out and making the big splash. And it was, again, it was like 3 days before the deadline. And a lot of people didn't think that Castillo would be moved like that soon. They thought it
Yeah.
would be like a 24-hour window type thing
That was again one of those guys that we spoke about, privately being a potential acquisition of the Yankees. And when
for
he fell off,
years.
the board, we went into like a panic mode. We're like, all right, who's still out there? And we thought we were getting even money with Montas, but obviously that didn't pay off. But
Yeah,
I am big jealous of Castillo.
we've been mostly positive here. If we gave out a negative award for worst trade of the year, it's definitely it's not like the Yankees gave up really anything to go get Montes, but he has been a complete bomb. He's been Sonny Gray 2.0,
Yeah.
um, and
At
he's
least Sonny
off the
Gray was
playoff
on the
roster.
field. you know, Sonny Gray showed up to work and didn't suddenly have a dead arm after two starts in New York.
Yeah,
Oh, bitterness. It leaks in again.
at least we got Trevino out of that deal. That's that was the main piece we really got.
Yeah, and it turned out we needed the bullpen arms, so
Yep.
it worked out. But all right, Marcus, I think it's time for the main event of our awards, and we're gonna go with the National League MVP. Who is your pick?
I'm going a little chalk here. I am going with Paul Goldschmidt from the first baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals. Um, this is a guy, he kind of always had like MVP hint to him, but I figured at this point in his career, it's probably not going to happen. He's just going to be a really solid player. Maybe he'll have a top 5 year, but he really strung together a monster year along with Arenado, who I thought was going to win it and be the one to stay hot, but it was Goldschmidt. He had a quiet September, but he had wrapped up the award by then. He stayed healthy the whole year, and he helped the Cardinals not just stay around 500, but like eventually end up taking that division from the division favorites, the Milwaukee Brewers, and completely knocked them out of the playoffs. So Goldschmidt gets my vote, with
We are
Freddie Freeman being a close second.
okay. Freddie Freeman had a great season. We are going to be in agreement on this, and I dare say we might be in agreement on both MVPs, but we'll get to it when we get to it. Paul Goldschmidt, as you mentioned, had a great season, 317 average, which I don't believe that was number one, but he might have been. I don't have the stats in front of me, but 317 average, a 404 on base percentage, 35 home runs, and 115 RBIs, as you mentioned, in the middle of a pretty darn good lineup. It's a no-brainer. Paul Goldschmidt wins. And you mentioned that at this point in his career, because he's been playing what feels like forever, going back to just years and years of losing on the Diamondbacks. Going into this season, I kind of had him in my mind as like a Rizzo level player, a guy who, isn't going to be your guy, your top guy, but would be a contributor. But he was the top guy on a loaded team. So, Paul Goldschmidt is also my NL MVP.
Yep. Been playing since 2011. So
11 years.
It feels like it's been forever, but.
Well, you know what it is? Every year in Arizona is 3 years in real life. It's the dry heat. All right. So, AL MVP. I am not going to do any pomp and circumstance on this. I say it's Aaron Judge. 311 batting average, 426 on base percentage, 61 home runs, the American League record, dare say it, the non-cool real record, 131 RBIs, and leader in every type of WAR, BABIP, FIB, DOS, UNO, every single type of statistical thing you can come up with. Aaron Judge led the league in by not a small margin. Marcus, take it from here, and then we'll start getting angry.
This should be his second American League MVP award, going back to 2017, where he had an absolutely stellar campaign when he hit 52 home runs. There's always, for whatever reason, maybe it's because he's 6'7" and a huge monster, there's always health concerns with Aaron Judge. There's all of the drama, which we can get to in a little bit, going into the season with him. None of it his fault, by the way.
Yeah.
But to show up and not just anchor, to carry the New York Yankees throughout the whole season. There was parts of the season where after the All-Star break where you could take his individual stats and then you could take the rest of the team, and Aaron Judge was outperforming the rest of the team. There was several series towards the back end of the season where we played like Tampa Bay and we played Houston, I think, back-to-back series. Aaron Judge was responsible for every run scored, whether he batted them in or he was the run himself. Like, that's MVP type stuff. And it's not just the numbers he's putting up, it's the fact that it mattered to his team. You take Aaron Judge off this team, I honestly don't know what the Yankees are. Like, I know they still have a super high payroll, but like, this is the heart and soul and the body of the New York Yankees.
If Aaron Judge wasn't on this club this year, it is possible that the Yankees would have finished behind the Orioles. There's no way that they are catching up to the Rays. There's no way they're catching up to Boston or Toronto. They're going to be fighting it out with, Boston finished last, but just kind of my going into the season mindset. As you mentioned, the entire New York offense after the All-Star break was there and believe in Judge.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, Marcus, he doesn't pitch, so he can't win this award.
Oh, yeah. No disrespect to Mr. Ohtani. He is also doing amazing things that we haven't seen before in our lifetime. Really things that have never been done before. People go back to Babe Ruth, but Babe Ruth was only doing it against like old out of shape white dudes, and they literally wouldn't let anybody else play the game. So what Ohtani is doing is phenomenal. And like, I don't want to take it for granted, but he's not Aaron Judge, and it's not having the impact that Aaron Judge has. Like, Aaron Judge he's also fielding. Like, Ohtani doesn't field, he DHs. So like, for Aaron Judge to play center field almost all of the season, and center field's a position that is like unique to itself.
Yeah. It's built for speed. Like, smaller guys play
like
an
Quan.
effective, center field.
Yeah.
Giant dudes that are 265 should not be playing center field because they're not physically capable, but Judge figures out a way to do it. He's a unicorn in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, he played an above average center field. He's a Gold Glove right fielder. They move him around to plug in the holes as the season goes on, and he does it no problem. It's seamless. And that's not his role again. So, you know, sure, Otani pitches and Otani hits. Well, Aaron Judge hits better than Otani, and he also plays center field almost every day. Aaron Judge games played 157 out of 162.
Yeah. And uh, last year, Otani played 8 games in the outfield, and they weren't starts. They were just like he would be pitching and he would be shifted into the outfield. That was before they had the Otani rule, where you can start a game as the pitcher and then kind of shift over to the DH. Um, Here's my measuring stick for it, and we can get stats in a second. But was Otani the best pitcher in the American League? No,
No,
he's not a Cy Young candidate. He might be in the top 8, top 7, but he's not taking it from Verlander, from Cease. I dare say he's not taking it from Cole.
no,
So he's not the best pitcher in
no.
the American League. If he didn't pitch, is he a good enough hitter to win the American League MVP?
Also, no.
Yeah, no, he's again probably knocking on the top 10. I dare say probably not as good of a hitter as he is a pitcher. He's probably in the top 15, top 20, but nowhere close to the MVP race. So it comes down to this argument, well, he does both. When you look at social media, anytime somebody's arguing and somebody points at Judge's numbers, they'll say, well, what's his ERA? What's Judge's ERA? Meaning that, like, if you are a pitcher and a hitter and are somewhat competent in both of them, you should just automatically win the MVP for the rest of your career. So why don't we just throw out the award? If numbers don't matter, why don't we just throw out the award selection, just write Otani's name on it as long as he makes it a half of a season, and just be, all right, Otani won it this year, let's move on, and just forget about looking at stats or looking at, I don't know, how you contributed to your team winning, because it's not the necessarily who had the best numbers award, although we're going to treat it like that, I guess. But there's an essence to, like, how did you help your team win?
Right.
And Otani as a pitcher helped his team win. Otani as a batter didn't do anything, because you would have games where Trout and Otani would hit a home run and they'd lose 20-6 or 20, something like that. And I get it. That's not Otani's fault that the pitcher was terrible, but, like, you can't just automatically give an award to somebody just because they're doing something you haven't seen before. There's something to be said about the fact that Judge is the leader in every statistical category other than batting average by a million miles. And batting average, he was close.
He was close. He was close up until like the last 3 days of the season. Like,
yeah. He was pressing, trying to get 162.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's definitely cool what Otani's doing. Some people do just want to put Otani's name on the MVP award until he's done or whatever. It doesn't have the impact, but there was definitely a stretch there where the Angels were only winning games where Otani pitched. So, like, there's something to that. But at the same time, how many games did they win? Like, if you're so good and you're doing it on both sides of the ball, then, like, your bat needs to be carrying the team to wins. And when Mike Trout came back after the All-Star break from what was a career-threatening back injury that, like, kind of got swept under the rug and people didn't pay much attention to it, again, because he's out with a bum team in California. When Mike Trout came back, like, Trout had more of an impact with a bad back than Otani did through the whole season. So, with the MVP award, I do look at impact. Like, just, it is a team game made up by individuals, but, like, you got to have an impact on your team. Like, you got to lead your team or be one of the main reasons that your team has success. And it doesn't have to be in the playoffs, but, like, can you at least be all the way up there? Like, can you be in the race up until the last week of the season? Like, that's at least what I want to see out of my MVP at the minimum.
Yeah. And I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to bury Otani. I mentioned earlier in the show, I want Ohtani to be a Yankee. I will sacrifice several people that I know and love to get Ohtani on the New York Yankees.
Definitely.
He's a great player, but Judge had a historic season. Never before. I mean, people have won the Triple Crown, and obviously he fell short of the Triple Crown, but nobody won the Triple Crown with this type of numbers. Nobody led a league in home runs by this many, and then also had a killer on base percentage, had a killer slugging percentage, had a killer WAR. Like everything that you can possibly quantify around him was just absurdly high, like historic levels. And I don't know the exact stats name. Obviously, we talked about WAR and wins above replacement, something you know a lot about. And Judge, the knock on WAR was that it didn't take into account Ohtani's value as a pitcher, but there are all these extended WARs and extended analysis numbers that like Fangraphs puts out on ESPN that take into account Ohtani as a pitcher and a hitter and factor that into WAR, and Judge as only a hitter and a fielder still beat Ohtani. So it's like if you want to point at these advanced metrics, there's not a single one of them other than ERA and wins and thrown strikeouts. There's no like overall quantifiable number that justifies Ohtani being the MVP, other than the fact that people are rightfully dazzled by his performance.
Yeah, and another reason that I'm just blown away by Judge, um, this is a stat I wanted to get out there. So during Babe Ruth's historic career, 15 years with the New York Yankees, he faced a total of 342 different pitchers. Aaron Judge this season, and the last time the stat was updated was September 22nd, so you can probably add a couple to that list. Aaron Judge this season alone faced 244 pitchers.
Wow.
Um, it's almost a different game, man. And for Aaron Judge to be doing that against guys who come out of the bullpen and facing different pitchers 3 or 4 times a game, fresh arms, guys throwing 100 miles per hour, just nobody did it like him.
Yeah, and we'll get some flack from any baseball old timers to listen to this, but you can't compare numbers from 100 years ago. As you mentioned, baseball wasn't integrated, so there's a lot of talented athletes that weren't allowed to participate, and you had pitchers throwing 13 inning complete games. So you'd have one guy going the entire time throwing his 76 mile per hour heater. So there, as you said, like you bring in this guy that's throwing 103 sidearm, from
Yep.
the like not out of the stretch. There's no comparison to like what these modern guys are doing. I just don't see, unless you have this bias, and granted, we're a little biased towards the Yankees. I don't think we are, but some people might accuse us of being biased towards the Yankees. But I think we're trying to be objective and using numbers here. But unless you have an axe to grind against Aaron Judge or a huge bias for Ohtani, like what are you basing that selection of trying to pick Ohtani? It makes no sense.
When was the last time you were watching sports or other television and they cut into a baseball game?
I mean, they certainly didn't cut into any Ohtani at bats.
They never cut into any Otani at bats. Never cut into any Otani 12 strikeouts through 6 innings. In a loss to the Detroit Tigers 8-4 games. Like, that's just not happening with anybody, man. Judge did the thing this season. He's my MVP. We've never seen anything like it. We probably will never see anything like it again. I don't want to cap his potential, because if he stays healthy, I don't see a reason why he can't hit 55 or 60 home runs again. Um, but yeah, and then there's the whole argument. He kind of brought it up, like, you know, steroids, integration. Like, there's always something for every generation. And why it was such a big deal that Judge hit 62 this season. The testing is stricter than ever. There's more banned substances than ever. Whereas in Babe Ruth's day, it was integration. You move on to the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, you were getting into the amphetamine era. And they didn't test for that until like 2000 and 10, 11. Like it was like 2 collective bargaining agreements ago that was finally like, hey,
Mhm.
stop with the amphetamines and we're going to be tested. Like, so guys were staying like laser focused, hyped up, charged up to play 162. So that's not an advantage that Judge has anymore. Whereas that was something that like Roger Maris and like those guys definitely were partaking in. It's noted history. Um, and then you have, steroids, which I personally think steroids rock. And you show me a failed drug test administered by MLB that Barry Bonds failed, and then I think that you have a case if you want to negate Barry Bonds' home run records or any of his stats. Same goes for McGuire and Sosa. I think the onus falls on MLB for not testing those years and not even turning a blind eye, but allowing it to happen and then later be like, no, no, no. Like,
Yeah.
no, they breathed breath back into baseball, and then later on you want to be like, that was a bad thing. That's on MLB to test the players. And if you're not going to test them, then yeah, they're going to look for a competitive advantage, and it rocked.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad about that.
I mean, here's the thing: steroids didn't. There's no way steroids help you hit a ball, like make contact.
Right.
That takes a level of skill that steroids doesn't help you with. It might help you turn a fly ball to the warning track into a home run, but it's very hard to hit a baseball, and steroids don't help you there. And for every batter that was on the juice, there was a pitcher thrown to him that was on the juice. So
Mm-hmm.
you got to deal with a guy who might unnaturally be hitting that 100-mile-per-hour that couldn't do it without a needle in his butt.
Absolutely, yeah. Um, there is no scientific evidence that equates steroid usage to hand-eye coordination.
No,
Just
I
doesn't
mean,
exist.
makes your head bigger, but that's a different thing.
Yeah.
So
So
Judge for MVP of the world and the universe. And I'll put you on the spot, Marcus. We're not at the end of the season yet. Obviously, end of the regular season, but we're a little bit away from free agency. Is Judge a New York Yankee next year?
I gotta say yes.
Yeah.
I just don't see how anybody, much like you can't be the guy to trade Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani, you cannot be the GM, especially when you're the New York Yankees. Like, you have an obligation to baseball. You have to keep this guy. He made an all-time bet, and now we can fill people in on the drama before the season. So, Aaron Judge, he got the call up when he was a bit older. In baseball, you have to play 6 seasons in order to hit free agency. Those 6 seasons, the team controls you. The first 3 years, you get paid bare minimum money, which for us is good money. But when you're a
Yeah.
baseball player and you're covering a lot of your own expenses and you've mortgaged a lot of your future to try to get to this point, like, you're living in debt. And you very much are living on like bags of potatoes. And it's a hard life for those guys coming up. Um, so when you make it to year 3, for 4, 5, and 6, you get arbitration, and so like either you or the team can either mutually agree or you take it to an independent arbitrator to be like, this is what you're actually worth based off of your performance plus what you got paid last, right? Um, so this year the Yankees went to arbitration with Judge. They didn't sign him to an extension. They didn't want to go on like a 1 year, hey, like, let's just call it even deal. They wanted to go to arbitration with Aaron Judge, which is absolutely insane. It's a very adverse position to take with your best player for a franchise that does not go to arbitration. The Yankees are very good about, hey, this is what we're going to pay you this season. You good with it? Yeah. They only take players to arbitration who they're trying to chase out. The last guy we took to arbitration was Dellin Betances, who
Mm.
we wanted we wanted out. Um, so yeah, we went to arbitration with Judge. Thankfully, we reached a number like hours before arbitration. But to take it up to that point, it's like, what are you doing? And you're daring him to bet on himself. And Cashman at the end of his year presser was talking about how when Aaron Judge is healthy, I think he said health or healthy in regards to Aaron Judge like 7 times in a 19-second clip. And you can already tell that's the angle that the Yankees are going to take to not pay this dude $40 million. And there's an argument that he earned himself even more. I'm speculating that the number he was looking for was equal to, if not greater than what Trout got, which is 35 annual value. And Judge is a big labor guy. He's always fighting for the players. He's in there fighting the owners, getting the players more opportunities. Oh,
Nope.
and getting more money. So Judge understands that, hey, he just put up the best season that we've ever seen in baseball history, um, and did it with the biggest franchise in baseball history, with the lights on, the brightest that they've ever been. He's going to go get paid. And if Aaron Judge gets paid $500 million this offseason, I would say that they might have even gotten a deal. Um, so yeah, I expect Aaron Judge to make it. I think conversations start with 40 million annual. Um, and the Giants have already come out and said they're looking to add. They want to bring Judge home. He grew up in the Bay Area. Barry Bonds was one of his favorite players, so there's already an emotional aspect to going to play for the Giants. The Mets are going to have a lot of money coming off the books, and they have the new richest owner in baseball who loves to spend, and gives starting pitchers who pitch 15 games a year $45-50 million for a season. So he's looking to spend. I would say that all 30 teams should be in on this guy, but there's going to be some teams that are just out, like Tampa and Baltimore. There's going to be a lot of competition, and he is the prettiest girl at the ball.
I definitely agree with you. I think his pay per year will probably be the highest paid, average annual value for any player in baseball. I don't know if he'll have the biggest overall contract because I don't know if some team is going to go and give him 10 years.
Right.
But my biggest concern, and this is something, if you're listening to this and you're not a Yankee fan, you probably have it in your mind that the Yankees are the Yankees of George Steinbrenner, where they'll just open up the pocketbooks and spend whatever it takes. The current regime is very frugal,
Mm-hmm.
and they like to, I apologize, Marcus, but they like to fuck around and just see what happens.
Sure do.
They like to, be indirect and play games, and yeah, we could offer X, but let's try offering 20% less than X to see what the reaction is. And my biggest concern is they can be doing this kind of diddle-dallying and this dance with Judge, and as you mentioned, like the Mets or the Giants can just swoop in and be like, hey, we're not going to screw around, here's our offer that blows the Cashman entry offer out of the water, and have him just be like, screw you guys. That's my only concern, is somebody needs to take the spending, the checkbook away from Cashman if he's not willing to make the moves that are necessary.
And how? Right?
Yeah.
So some higher power needs to come in and intervene. I don't care if it's George Steinbrenner reaching up from the earth.
I don't care if it's George Steinbrenner, George Costanza, whatever.
Yeah, there's some crazy stat how like the Yankees are like plus, it's estimated like they win an extra, like it's not exactly WAR, but like Judge factors into like an extra like 60 games that the Yankees would win or something like that. And it's like there's no way that you can let this dude out the door. But we'll see. We'll see. What's your prediction?
I think, gun to my head, I think he ends up a Yankee.
Okay.
I think, and I know nothing about him as a person, but I think if I had to guess, he probably really likes his teammates. Like just the people that he's already friends with, whether it be Rizzo or Stanton or Glaber. There seems to be a genuine camaraderie there. I can see there being some value in being the face of one of the biggest brands in sports, in a major market. So even if the Giants offer you more money, it's like you can make that up in endorsements and merchandising and stuff like that being on the New York Yankees. Um, as long as New York doesn't come out and lowball them and try to dangle this alleged injury history during negotiations, and let's be real, like a lot of his injuries, like, okay, he was hit in the hand by a pitch and it broke a bone in his hand. Oh, yeah, that's his fault, and missed a bunch of time for that. And the other little freak injuries.
He had a foot injury, which was misdiagnosed by the New York Yankees. And he had an intercostal injury, which was misdiagnosed by the New York Yankees.
Yeah. So it's not like he's just this lumbering guy that's breaking down like a Zion in the NBA. He's a guy who, for the most part, is there for you every day. So as long as Cashman doesn't try being a cheapskate, I think he's back on the Yankees. But I am not confident. I'd say I give it like a 65% chance he's back on the Yankees.
Yeah, and I talked about money coming off the books for like the Mets and the Giants. The Yankees have a lot of money coming off the books. Aroldis Chapman, $15 million. Zach Britton is $12 million. That's almost $30 million right there. Plus you add on what you're going to pay Judge anyways. You've already cleared the annual value of Judge and you already have extra money to spend. So the money is there for the Yankees. It's just a matter of, do they want to be the team that commits to this dude? It is a big contract, but also like it's earned. And if this guy has already taken you now to the ALCS, we'll see how far he goes. I just can't see any universe where they let him go, but I can also see it.
Yeah. And like take the performance on the field away, like how much is he contributing to your merchandising? And you're a man who knows all about making money at the merch table. And your ticket sales and your television revenue and all of that stuff is going to take a massive hit if he's gone. Yes, you're going to lose a lot more games too, but you're also going to make a lot less money. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration as well. But I digress. I think we made our case for Aaron Judge as like all-world MVP. And all that is left, Marcus, is we are down to the final four teams. In the American League, we have the dreaded, hated Houston Astros versus the young upstarts, the New York Yankees. And we have the San Diego Padres versus the Philadelphia Fightin' Phillies. Why don't we start with the National League? Who do you see coming out of this series?
So I think this is gonna go 6 or 7. It's like I love the hitting more for the Phillies.
Yeah.
I think they have more clearly defined roles on their team. I feel like with the Padres, Trent Grisham's been playing out of his mind. But it's like, don't let Machado beat you. And watch out for Soto, who still hasn't found the power in San Diego yet, but like you got to keep him off the base and don't let Machado hit a homer with like men on base. And I think you can beat the Padres. But the Padres pitching is crazy because they have 4 to 5 actual starters who can go.
Yeah.
And they can piggyback 2 of those starters and really shut you out for a game 4, no problem.
Yeah.
So like Philly's got to watch out for that, but I just feel like I think there's something to, and I think we're seeing it. There's like playoffs can go one or two ways for teams where it's like either you're the hot team who like kind of had a middling season and like you get hot at the right time, or you're just this powerhouse that's consistent through the whole season. And we've seen that on the AL with who came out, but on the NL, it's like 2 teams that turned on the Jets as, the calendar flipped over to September and October. So I'm going to ride the Phillies. I just feel like they have it. And I think if they can get Nola and if they can get Wheeler to take the first 2 games, and if they can steal a game with the Suarez and Syndergaard piggyback, I think they've got it.
I'm going to agree with you with the Phillies, and this is my reason why. As you mentioned, Padres pitching is top-notch, and usually pitching in the playoffs is the most important thing. Like, a good pitcher will shut down a good hitter every single time. But I want to talk about what you said as far as momentum goes. If you go back to this Yankees versus Guardians series, and I don't mean this as any kind of insult on the Guardians, and I think you'll understand when you hear it. The Guardians had all of the momentum. The Guardians were the hot team, but they didn't have the talent that was necessary to put up the runs to compete with the Yankees. They had the talent to have these rallies in the ninth, to get the bloop and the stolen base and the lucky hit and the extra. They had the talent to make these kind of these rallies, but they didn't have the guys that could consistently put it over the porch.
Right.
The Phillies are the Guardians, but with a lot of extra power hitters thrown on top of it. They are a team that can manufacture runs and rally in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs and down by 4. They have that kind of energy and pop, but at the same time, they have Realmuto, they have Harper, they have, I'm forgetting his name, their first base, Hoskins. They have these guys who are their Judge and their Stantons, who could just all of a sudden hit a 3-run bomb. But they also have the guys that can hit the bloop single out of nowhere and get a couple ducks on the pond. Yeah. So I like the Padres pitching. I like maybe the top third of their lineup. But overall, I think the momentum being on the side of the Phillies, I like them making it to the World Series. And, it would be a cool thing. Like, good for the Phils.
Yeah, good for the Phils. And, that's a team, they gave the big contract to Bryce Harper a couple seasons ago. And they kind of spent the first 2 years of that contract, ooh, are we World Series contenders? And when you sign Bryce Harper to a $300 million contract, you pay him almost $30 million a year. You need to be a World Series contender. And they finally went out this offseason and they spent big on Castellanos, and they spent big on keeping Realmuto last season.
And I forgot about Schwarber. That's a guy.
Schwarber's another guy they paid.
Tested.
Yep, he came in. So yeah, they have 4 or 5 dudes who can clear the fence easily, but then they also have 4 or 5 dudes who can get on base, but can also make a blast happen too, like Alec Boehm, their rookie third baseman. He's a guy who could easily take you deep, or he could work a walk, or he could just get a single in there. He's kind of one of those X factor players that you worry about in the bottom of the lineup.
Yeah, and they have, I'm just pulling it up right now because I forget his name. They have a rookie utility infielder.
Vierland or Matt starts with a V.
No, you know what? My fantasy baseball app is not logged in on my new phone, but I don't have it in front of me. But whoever is a Phillies fan is probably yelling at this. But it's a guy who's in the top 5 or 6 of Rookie of the Year finalists.
Vierling, yeah.
That might be him, but
I think it's Matt Vierling.
So they have a lot of young guys. They have veterans, like I mentioned, but that have postseason experience. I like the Phillies. I won't belabor the point. Marcus.
Oh, they also have Bryson Stott. Maybe that's
Bryson Stott's the guy I was thinking of. Yeah, Bryson Stott. The reason why he sticks in my head is he was, I want to say high school teammate with Bryce Harper, and they're buddies and they trained together and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he came out of camp people were really high on him. He had a slow start to the season, but he turned it on after the break.
Yeah, he's out of Nevada.
Yeah. All right, last one. Astros versus Yankees. Marcus, what's your prediction?
The Houston Astros.
Yeah, same.
For everything great about the New York Yankees that we just waxed eloquently about, the New York Yankees have glaring outfielding problems. They have a glaring problem with investing a season into a stopgap shortstop in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who had played one great defensive season, which was the COVID-shortened 60-some game season, and he played at third base for a team that nobody was watching or caring about. We played him all season. He ranked towards the bottom of the league defensively, but Aaron Boone and the Yankees front office kept saying that he's one of the best shortstops in the game. But when it turned out that when our backs were against the wall and we needed to put our very best lineup in to save the season, IKF rode the bench.
Yeah.
And it was very apparent early on in April that Oswaldo Cabrera was ready. And that's who Cashman had even mentioned. Hey, we're not going to spend big because we have Peraza and we have Cabrera coming up, and they're almost ready. Cabrera needs to work on his hitting. He went on a power tear, got called up. He's been amazing, but we wouldn't play him at shortstop. We'd play him in the outfield. We'd play him at second base. Well, he's finally playing shortstop, and he's making great plays. And we kind of use him as a utility guy. So I'm hoping that we stick with Cabrera at short. IKF cannot be on this roster. He's taking up a roster spot because he can only play shortstop and he doesn't play it well. So there's nowhere else to play him. I worry about our bullpen. They were heavily used down the stretch to end the season, plus the Guardian series. Wandy Peralta pitched all 5 games.
Yeah, first time ever that's happened.
Yeah, so he could continue pitching out of his mind, right? And just kind of like empty everything he has into this postseason and then probably be a bum the rest of his career.
Still be a Yankee legend, yeah.
Right. But the Astros are just this juggernaut that they just keep reloading. They just keep replenishing from their farm system. They plan these things out. They lost Carlos Correa, probably the best shortstop in baseball. If not, he's top 3, top 5.
Lost Springer.
They lost Springer a couple seasons ago. No problem. Like, they just keep replacing players with guys from their farm system. They had Verlander miss a season. No problem. Like, they just replace him with arms from their farm system. It's almost like I'm jealous of just how well they run their organization. And that's what's so frustrating going back to 2017 is that they didn't need to cheat to beat us.
Yeah.
They are that good. Top to bottom. Now, unlike the 2017 year, their lineup is not as stacked. You get past the first 5 of their lineup, and you've got some easy outs, 6, 7, 8, 9. But they're still very top heavy. Like, Alvarez is going to give us some sleepless nights.
Yeah.
He's going to clip us for sure. Altuve is going to clip us for sure. Kyle Tucker's probably going to have a big game somewhere. Bregman always clips. Yeah, like those are their big players you got to watch out for.
I think so. I agree with just everything you said. My biggest concerns going into this series, Astros notwithstanding, like Yankees, the current Yankees coming out of that Guardian series against any playoff team that's left in this playoffs, I would be hard pressed to pick the Yankees to win because of just the fiasco of our pitching staff going into the playoffs was depleted and weak. And then you get this 5-game series where almost everybody was used to their maximum. And then they got to show up tomorrow in Houston and play a super refreshed Astros team that was able to completely reset their bullpen, reset their pitching rotation. Yankees, everybody's going in there with like not a full week's of rest. And yes, we're starting the series with Tyon, but even he had that relief appearance during the Guardian series. So from a pitching standpoint, yes, maybe Cole in some world could line up against Verlander and they can both equal each other's zeros. I think Verlander still has the edge, but we're not getting that matchup and we're not getting their number 2 against our number 2. It's just the pitching rotation is just so messed up based on injuries, based on the playoffs, all that. And you mentioned that the back half of the Astros lineup is weak. I love the New York Yankees, but we field so many automatic outs on a daily basis. There are players on that team that if they get a single, I am shocked. There's Hicks, automatic out. Trevino lately, automatic out. Glaber up until these playoffs was a automatic out. IKF, God help us, automatic out.
Bader's supposed to be an automatic out.
Yeah,
he's playing out of his mind.
Yeah, Marwin Gonzalez an automatic out. There's sometimes if Judge or Stanton or Rizzo are on a cold streak, those are some guys that are like, as much as I love them and they put up a lot of runs in this last playoff series, if you want to talk who do I trust to be more consistent, like Bregman, Altuve, or the other Astro top of their lineup, or Judge, Stanton, and Rizzo, I think that there's going to be entire games where the Yankee power hitters just don't show up, and that's
The
what
Yankees just hit, if I saw the stat correctly, they just hit like 182 during the Guardian series,
Yeah.
which is the lowest recorded team batting average for a team to win a series in advance in the postseason.
Yeah,
Like,
they were saved by the home runs. You
yeah,
know?
the bats are cold. The Yankees bats are absolutely cold. We turned it on for 2 games, but again, it's the long ball. And
Doesn't give them up.
Houston doesn't give them up for one, and Houston can play that game, or they can just slap singles and doubles, and cut you that way. We've seen the Yankees win lots of different kind of ways during the season, but like our tried and true formula, it's the extra base hits. We got to get men on base, and we got to capitalize during those moments. We can't have Judge going 2 for 14 in a series with 13 strikeouts.
Yeah. I can't have base running errors by Donaldson, another guy who's most often an automatic out.
Don't get me started on that. Yeah.
So Astros, how many games did the Yankees take, 1 or 2 or 3?
6.
Did they make a series of it?
Astros in 6.
See, you're giving the Yankees more credit than I would. So it's a best of 7. Does it go 3, 2, and 2?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm not sure about the layout of it. Like, I don't see us taking any of them in Houston. I don't know, man. I think best case is 5. I hope I'm wrong. I would love a miracle season, but like I see Astros in 5. I see Yankees maybe squeaking out 1, like the Cole outing, because Garrett Cole will line up against a back of the rotation starter for the Astros, and we'll somehow get that one. And I don't know. I say 5, Astros in 5.
Yeah, I think because of the collective bargaining agreement delay this season, I know it's like this for the NL, and I think it's like this for the AL. It's you get your rest day after like game 1 or 2, and then you only have one more rest day. And then I think once you get to games like 5, 6, and 7, once it goes back to home field advantage, there's no more off days. So after game 5? Is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm very fuzzy on this.
3, 2, and 2, right? I'm not sure if that's right, but whatever it is, whatever it is after, like there's no more travel, so no more travel days off. So I think that benefits the Astros, but at the same time, the Yankees have only played 5 games in the last 17 days. And I think it's even like 4 and 14 if you want to lower it. So Yankees ideally should be rested, but yeah, I don't know. After that Guardian series, it just feels like Houston has us again. They've just been better managed. They've been prepared. Like we were kind of peeking into the playoffs back in July and August. The Astros have been looking into the playoffs since April or May.
Yeah. So hopefully we're wrong. We'll see. I think, as much of a Yankee homers as we are, we try to be realistic with our expectations based on what we've seen. So we are basically, you said you were for the Phillies, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're both basically saying Phillies, Astros, and the World Series. I know it's a long way out. You can't predict what happened in the series leading up to it, but if that series was starting right now, who's winning that?
I'm going to go with the Houston Astros.
Yeah, I think aside from Schwarber and maybe a couple guys that I'm forgetting about, there's not a lot of playoff battle-tested people on the Phillies.
No.
People forget that the Nationals won a World Series after they lost Harper,
right.
So I don't think we need to go into great detail on it. But, man, I hate to say it, but those damn cheating Astros are my World Series pick.
Hey, we mentioned earlier how Seattle had the longest playoff drought in major sports. Well, the Phillies had the second longest that they ended this year. And Gene Segura had the most at bats for somebody not in the playoffs in Major League, like in recent Major League history, like in the last 50 years or something ridiculous like that.
Wow.
So yeah, that roster is not playoff tested. Hopefully, like ignorance is kind of bliss for them. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just think it's the Astros, and like it also comes down to managing. Like Dusty Baker is one of the best baseball managers of all time, in my opinion. Definitely has his faults, but and shortcomings as a manager. But I love Dusty Baker, and he's the perfect manager for that team to navigate them out of the cheating scandal and the different major departures they've had through free agency. Yeah, I just think Astros have the advantage: pitching, hitting, fielding, coaching, home field advantage. It all lines
Yeah.
up Houston.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not hoping that that's what happens, but
Absolutely not.
yeah, if I'm a betting man, that's the way I'm going. If the Yankees can't win the World Series, I'm rooting for the Phils.
Absolutely.
If the Phils can't do it, I'm rooting for the Padres.
Mm-hmm.
If the Padres can't do it, I'm rooting that they just call off the season. But if I got to pick a winner, it's going to be the Astros.
Yeah, I hope the earth opens up and swallows Houston whole.
Yeah, at least the stadium, an empty stadium.
Yeah.
But Marcus, I think this was a successful episode. What about you?
Highly successful. I super enjoyed myself, and maybe we need to run it back for football season or something.
Ooh, yeah, maybe preview the playoffs, see what those Chiefs are up to. I hear that the Bills just won their Super Bowl.
Well, they sure did. Yeah, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs in a tough, hard-fought game, and don't you know it that they're now the class of the AFC, just like last year, and where to get them?
Yeah, I mean the only thing I can say is that Mitch Trubisky beat Tom Brady, so
Look,
so much for legacy.
I'm so happy that y'all beat Tom Brady in the Bucks. Tom Brady, who is ditching practice on Wednesdays, who ditched practice on Friday, who hung out with his buddies on Saturday and didn't do the team walkthrough, and he just walks in on Sunday expecting to beat a professional football team. And I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen that easily. So I'm happy your Steelers put it on him. I'm happy he lost to both a rookie quarterback and a bad quarterback.
A very handsome bad quarterback, though.
Very
That
handsome.
Trubisky.
Very handsome. Give him that. A defense that's without their best player. Yeah, loved it, and thank you for that. So hey,
Absolutely.
go
Yeah,
Steelers.
that'll be our next episode of Sports Talk.
I do have a football question to ask you.
All right.
You've never been in this position before because much like my Kansas City Chiefs, your Pittsburgh Steelers are winners. You are a winning franchise. No shade whatsoever. I love Mike Tomlin as a head coach. The standard of excellence that the Steelers have, I respect the heck out of. Even the last couple seasons where you should have thrown the towel and you have Duck Hodges in there, you find a way to make it to 500 and to be in the playoff race the last week of the season. That said, you have the rare opportunity to possibly get, there's that word again, to possibly get the first, second, third pick of the upcoming NFL draft without your team tanking. Like you guys didn't go into the season like, hey, we're tanking. Like you have a lot of players you're paying a lot of money to. You have a lot of good draft picks from the last draft, like George Pickens. What do you want? Do you want your team, who's probably doesn't have a Super Bowl run in them, but maybe they could make the playoffs and be one and done again? Do you want to continue that, or do you want to tank? Not tank, but do you want to see your team competitively not win games?
Oh yeah, I get you. That's a very good question. Here's the thing. Even if the Steelers get a middle of the draft pick, I think the Steelers have demonstrated they're very good at player evaluation and selection.
Absolutely.
All of their wide receiver hits are late round guys. They never draft a wide receiver in the first couple the first couple picks of a draft. They never take a running back like really high. Even our quarterback this year, he was 17th overall, something like that. So Kenny Pickett wasn't like a number one overall pick. So I don't feel like they need the number 1 overall pick, the number 2 overall pick, the number 3 overall pick to get great value in the draft. For me, my goal going into this season is my same goal I had going into last season, which I assumed was a lost season. Last year it was be 8-8 or better. This year there's an extra game, so my fingers crossed hope is 9-7, which I think is unrealistic. But that's my pie in the sky thing. Like where you have Super Bowl aspirations, I have aspirations for 9-7.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they can somehow squeeze that out, I mean they're 1 game out of first place right now in their division.
That's insane.
Yeah,
That's insane.
They're 1 game behind the Bengals, who they have a win on, and the Ravens. So I would like to continue Tomlin's streak of never having a losing season. My last losing season was with Tommy Maddox at quarterback in 2003.
I remember that season.
Even then, that was 7-9. So that wasn't like this terrible, like Cleveland Browns type season. But yeah, so my dream is to finish 9-7. You get a middle of the row draft pick. I mean, TJ Watt was a middle of the first round guy. Antonio Brown, say what you want about him, he was a 6th round guy.
Yeah.
So I think Pittsburgh's good at selecting talent. It's not like they're going to go and try to get a quarterback. So let's try to go 500 or a game above 500.
That's the thing, because like if you end up with a top 5 pick, you're in the quarterback conversation with 3 good ones coming out this year. I know it's a good running back class too.
Yeah.
But yeah, the quarterbacks are going to go high this year, especially since last year was kind of sparse with the quarterbacks. So it's like, oof, do you already toss in the towel on Pickett, which some teams have done, like Arizona, going Josh Rosen, and then the next year going Kyler Murray, and just be like, hey, it's not working out. Let's take another quarterback. That's what the analytics say to do. But also, you guys are going to get value no matter where you are. So, like, do you trade back? Do you trade out? Like,
I can tell you if I had to put a bet on it, and I don't follow a lot of college football, but I can see them taking Joey Porter's kid out of Penn State. First round talent cornerback, and Pittsburgh needs secondary help. They need offensive line and secondary, and that's a guy who already has ties to the Pittsburgh organization, plays in Pennsylvania, would address an immediate need, a glaring need. So and they're saying middle to late first round, so I can see that with him.
Okay.
So we'll see. Again, we'll address that hopefully when we get back together.
Absolutely.
Marcus, do you have anything to plug?
Final Wrestling Place right here on the soon to be named network with myself and Mr. Tim. If you happen to be unfamiliar, we take the nouns professional wrestling and we put them into either a good place or the bad place. And another podcast also do with Mr. Tim is Viewer's Choice, where after every major WWE premium live event and AEW pay-per-view, we give you a quick breakdown, 40, 50 minutes or so, and tell you what to watch, what to skip, and let you know who the MVP of the show is. And then a third project I have going on is over on the North-South Connection, where you can find Viewer's Choice as well. And that is with JT, and we do WWE War, which is where we take a baseball-style analytical-based approach towards WWE pay-per-views, review them in seasons, starting with the first pay-per-view after WrestleMania, and ending with that year's WrestleMania, as opposed to a traditional January to December look. And we have different categories that we give like a plus-minus points-based system too. So that's a fun project where right now we are finishing up 2004, 2005. So go ahead and check those out.
Nice. Obviously, this has been a special presentation of Porch Talk, my regular weekly podcast with Todd Roker from Long Box Heroes. But go ahead and also check me out on At Odds with Wrestling. And this coming Friday, myself and many people from the soon-to-be-named network will be at Sokol's in Bethlehem for the LVAC Let's Hang Out event. And I'm going to cheer on Gummy Boar. Everybody can go and have their own individual agendas, but that's why I go. That and the $3 bottled beers, but should be a good time.
Yeah, can't beat that. And I think I might show up there too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. Looking forward to seeing you there, buddy, and anybody else that comes out. But again, Marcus, thank you. I won't keep you on. I assume when I originally contacted you about this, I was like, maybe we'll talk for a half hour. maybe
No.
45 minutes. But it's going on now almost 2 hours. But thank you again for coming on. And again, this has been Sports Talk.
You're listening to the soon-to-be-named network, the Lamborghini of Podcast Network.